The first thing that smacked me that morning was the sound. 3 massive charter buses, brakes squealing at the end of my gravel driveway, engines coughing up diesel smoke like some traveling circus, had landed on my lawn. I nearly dropped my coffee, just watching those doors hiss open. Out came families lugging coolers, kids dragging inflatable dolphins, old folks in sun hats, like I'd woken up in a public park, not my own damn pasture. You know that feeling when your stomach just drops? That was me, standing barefoot on the porch, watching a stream of total strangers tromp onto my land under a vinyl banner flapping in the wind. HOA Summer Extravaganza. Thank you to our generous host. Yeah, that happened. Took me less than a minute to figure out who was behind it. Karen, queen of the HOA, self-appointed ruler of the subdivision across the highway. The woman who'd spent a year trying to rope my property into her little empire of rules and fees. But the kicker, my land, was never part of her HOA. Not once. Didn't matter. She'd apparently convinced 3 busloads of her minions otherwise, and now I had a full-blown invasion, turning my pasture into a pop-up county. Fair. Thing is, Karen didn't know I'd spent the last 2 weeks reinforcing my steel gate and rerouting every driveway camera straight to my phone. She had no clue the gate had an electronic lock eye. Could snap shut with one tap. So while her crowd fanned out, grills banging down on the grass, teens stringing bunting between my oaks, I kept my face neutral and my hands steady. Part of me wanted to laugh. The other part wanted to scream. Now, I should back up a sec. See, Karen had been gunning for me since the day she discovered my barn was painted the wrong shade of red. Letters, threats of fines, some made-up clause about community stewardship. She even tried to cite me for keeping goats without a permit. Goats, mind you, that had been here longer than her vinyl fences. I ignored her, mostly, until she started sending maps to her HOA, coloring my land yellow like it was already hers. So I walked down my steps, boots crunching gravel, trying to keep my pulse steady. Karen was perched front and center, neon pink pantsuit, clipboard in one hand and a megaphone in the other, barking. Thanks to our community's generosity, today we reclaim public space from selfishness. The way she spat out that word, selfishness, like I was some cartoon villain. The crowd clapped, some out of confusion, some because she'd sold them on a fantasy. I checked my phone. 1 more minute until the show really started. I moved slow past a pack of confused kids chasing one of my goats. Caught the eye of a county zoning guy who'd warned me about Karen's little schemes months before. This isn't public land, he muttered. I nodded, thumb hovering over the lock button. 9 a.m. sharp, I tapped it. The gates swung shut with a metallic clang, and just like that, every single guest, plus the buses that brought them, was locked inside my property. Karen's speech trailed off. People started noticing. The drivers looked at each other, sweating bullets. I took a slow sip of coffee and finally spoke. You're all trespassing. 3 buses, no invitation. That's a problem. Silence. Then Karen, shrill as ever. Don't listen to him. This is public land. But her voice cracked. Even her own bus driver looked ready to bolt. We were told this was a public event, he stammered. I just shrugged. Best get comfy. No one's leaving till the sheriff sorts this out. You could practically hear the crowd's energy drain away. Karen tried to gather herself, stomping up to the gate, face red and tight. Open this gate or you'll regret it, she hissed. Voice low. I raised my eyebrow. You brought them here, Karen. Own it. A few folks started packing up. Some glared at her. Some looked at me like I'd grown horns. I let the silence stretch, leaning on the gatepost, watching the slow unravel. The real fun started when kids broke out their phones, live streaming Karen's county corral for all the world. The sun climbed. The crowd grew. Restless. People started realizing just how far they were from home, and just how flimsy Karen's story was. Around mid-morning, a dad with 2 cranky kids sidled up. Hey, man, we just want to go home. Sheriff's on the way, I told him. Nobody's leaving till he gets here. That's when Karen switched tactics, grabbing her megaphone and declaring, he's holding us hostage. But now parents were shouting back. You said this was a park. Why are we locked in? One blogger with a GoPro caught the whole circus. Karen in pink, goats wandering in the background, me leaning calm as stone. When the sheriff finally rolled up, he took one look at the mess and just shook his head. Karen made a scene, demanding my arrest for kidnapping. Sheriff just asked, "Ma'am, why are all these people on his property?" She stammered, waving her flyer. He asked for deeds. I handed him the paperwork. "This land's been in my family since before there was an HOA, I said. He scanned it, then turned to Karen. "You got any legal claim?" "Nothing but sputters." Crowd started booing her, some folks yelling they'd been scammed. By noon, the heat was turning tempers raw. Sheriff made it clear, everyone back on the buses. Karen begged, pleaded, threatened, but her audience was done. They filed past her, cooler by cooler, muttering about lawsuits and wasted Saturdays. As the buses rolled away, Karen tried one last barb. "You haven't seen the last of me." I just smiled. Not if I can help it. The dust hadn't even settled before the whole thing was viral. News crews showed up. Memes popped up, goats with badges, Karen in a toy bus. Calls came from reporters, lawyers, even other HOAs who'd seen enough of her kind. Karen, meanwhile, started sending threats through lawyers and anonymous notes. But by then her own board had dumped her, neighbors apologized, and the county sent me official word my land was protected for good. Funny twist. The people who trespassed became unexpected allies. Some sent letters apologizing, offering to testify if Karen ever tried anything again. The goats became local celebrities. Folks drove by for selfies with the now famous locked gate. Even the zoning guy showed up with donuts and a grin. Karen herself faded into legend, her pink pantsuit now a Halloween costume around here. Word was she'd moved away, chased by debts and infamy. That's how it all ended. A war that started with buses and ended with a locked gate, a viral video, and a community finally waking up to what happens when one person pushes too far. I walk my fence lines at dusk now, mug in hand, goats wandering by, and every time I close that gate, I think about the line between neighbor and invader, where respect ends and resistance begins. So let's hear it. Have you ever dealt with a Karen or an HOA gone wild? Where do you draw the line? Drop your thoughts below, hit like if you believe in standing your ground, and subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, sometimes the best defense is just a good, solid gate. If you'd told me the whole saga would go quiet after that, you'd have been dead wrong. Because if there's one thing I learned from Karen, it's that some folks just don't know how to lose gracefully. About a week after the buses rolled out and the dust settled, I started noticing little signs she wasn't finished, not by a long shot. It started with paperwork, of course, because that's the Karen playbook. Envelopes stuffed in my mailbox. County officials knocking about routine inspections. Even a couple of drones buzzing over the pasture on Saturday mornings. Yeah, drones. The goats weren't impressed, but I sure noticed. One afternoon, a white SUV pulled up outside my gate, and out came a man in a sharp suit, briefcase, shiny shoes, the whole deal. He waved, polite as you please, and called out, "Mr. Harris, I'm here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. You know the drill." I kept the gate between us and let him slide his paperwork under the bars, cease and desist, claims about defamation, compensation for lost community opportunities. I read it, smiled, handed it right back. "You're barking up the wrong tree," I said, and he left in a swirl of dust, face red as a beet. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. There were moments when I wondered if it was ever going to end. Karen, even after losing her crown, still had plenty of strings to pull in the county. Old favors, committee friends, you name it. Suddenly, my goats needed new inspections, my well had to be tested, and I got letters about possible unauthorized fencing. All routine, of course, but every little hassle was meant to wear me down, get me to slip up. Let me tell you, it takes a special kind of patience to keep calm through a bureaucratic siege, but that's exactly what I did. Every envelope got photographed, every voicemail saved, and every conversation noted down. My lawyer, Lena, smart as a whip, zero tolerance for bull, told me, just hold steady. They want you to snap. Don't give him the satisfaction. The whole time, the internet kept the fire burning. Clips of the standoff went viral, and every week there'd be some new meme. Karen in a toy bus, my goats wearing sheriff hats, you name it. At first, I thought it was just a joke, but then folks started sending me messages, people from all over, sharing their own run-ins with overzealous HOAs, thanking me for standing up. I never set out to be anybody's folk hero, But the support kept me going, made the paperwork war seem almost funny. Almost. Twist of fate. One day, a letter showed up from a handful of the very people who'd been on those buses. Not angry, not threatening, but apologizing. They said Karen had lied, that they'd had no idea my land wasn't public, and a couple even offered to testify if things went sideways again. Honestly, it caught me off guard, but it made something inside me relax just a bit. The enemy wasn't 3 busloads. It was just one stubborn neighbor with too much time. And way too much pride. I wish I could say Karen faded away quietly, but you know better than that. Her last stand came not in a meeting or on a bus, but through anonymous notes. We're watching. One said, and another, your goats can't save you. I just sent them straight to the sheriff, who by now had a whole file on the HOA's greatest hits. That man deserves a medal, honestly. He'd drive by every now and then, tip his hat, remind me I was still within my rights. Then came the wildest twist of all. Emails leaked to the local news. Turns out, Karen had used HOA funds to pay for those buses and her lawyer, without board approval. Suddenly, she wasn't just a nuisance, she was headline news. Bus Karen, they called her now. Memes, radio jokes, even HOA meetings in other states started using my story as a warning. By then, she was out as president, stripped of her title, shunned by the same neighbors she'd marched onto my lawn. She tried one last move, sent a city lawyer to buy my land, above market value, quick cash. I didn't even have to think about it. I burned the letter in my wood stove, watched it turn to ash. And that was it. The war wasn't won with lawyers, or locks, or even viral videos. It was won by holding the line, keeping receipts, and refusing to let somebody else's fantasy become my reality. The county certified my land. The sheriff wrote up the last report, and the HOA issued a sheepish apology. Even the folks who trespassed shook my hand in the end, and some of their kids come by to feed the goats every so often under my watch. Sometimes I stand at the gate in the evening, mug in hand, watching the sun drop behind the hills, thinking about how close I came to losing what mattered most. How easy it is for one person's crusade to snowball if nobody pushes back. I'm not bitter, just wiser, and maybe a little prouder. The fence is just a fence again, the gate swings free, and the land feels like mine in a way it never did before. So if you ever find yourself facing a Karen with a clipboard and an agenda, just remember, every gate has 2 sides, but the lock is yours to control. Where would you have drawn the line? Ever had to face down a neighbor who didn't know when to quit? Drop your stories in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up for what's yours, and subscribe for more. This land's staying put, and so am I.